In the heart of a cold, indifferent city, where the hustle of everyday life drowns out the cries of those left behind, a 16-year-old boy named Jamal struggles to survive. His life is defined by loneliness and hardship, searching through trash bins for scraps of food. But one rainy night, everything changes. When Jamal stumbles upon a lost blind girl named Ava shivering in the dark alley, he makes a choice that will alter both their destinies forever. What happens next is a journey of kindness, sacrifice, and an unexpected bond that transforms not just their lives but the world around them. But could one act of selflessness lead to a new life, a second chance, and hope for a future that seemed impossible? Join us as we unfold a story of courage, heart, and the power of never giving up. The city where Jamal lives is not a pleasant place. It is a large, fast-paced city where the flickering neon lights on the billboards have become an inseparable part of the bustling lives of its people. The sounds never cease: car horns, hurried footsteps on the sidewalk, the rumbling of buses, and other noisy distractions, all forming a chaotic symphony that few pay attention to. This city is crowded, yet there is little connection between its inhabitants. It's like a clock that runs continuously, and only those who live on the crowded streets can feel the absence of each other. Jamal is a 16-year-old boy living on the outskirts of this city. He is not a standout child, not one with a complete family or a warm home. In reality, Jamal has nothing. He lives in a world devoid of love, care, and meaningful relationships. He lives in a world where the people around him don't see him, don't care about his existence. Each day, Jamal fights to survive. He has no home, no place to call home. The only roof he has is the dimly lit corners of alleys where he can stay for the night. Cardboard pieces, old cloths, or torn tarps become his home. Jamal no longer remembers when this life became normal to him. He has become so accustomed to waking up in dark alleys, his tired eyes seeing the cars pass by with no one noticing him. Jamal's day begins with searching for food. The owners of restaurant shops or even bakeries throw away leftover items at the end of the day. Jamal has learned to live off the scraps of others' lives. He searches through trash bins behind stores or beside delivery trucks. This is the only way he can survive each day. There is never enough, but also never too little, and he has learned to accept it. With ragged clothes, Jamal always looks unappealing. The old hoodie he wears is the only piece of clothing he has kept through the years. The shoes he wears are worn down to the point where they can no longer be called shoes, just scraps of fabric tied together. In his small backpack, Jamal only carries a few important items: a small photo of his mother, a faded plastic bottle, and a few pieces of tissue paper that he treasures because they are the last things he has left. He often stands in front of shop windows, gazing at the lives of others: the busy men in suits, the beautiful girls laughing with friends, the rich people sitting in luxury cars. They never notice Jamal. And Jamal in those moments feels like a ghost in this city, forgotten and uncared for. The world around Jamal is a big but harsh city. This city has no place for people like him, those living on the fringes with nothing but vague hopes of a better future. Everything here is rushed, from the cars speeding down the streets, to workers hurriedly entering offices, to tourists taking selfies next to street food carts. No one looks down, no one turns back, and no one stops to ask Jamal if he needs anything. From the busy streets where the flashing lights never go out, Jamal feels like he's being left behind. He knows there are many wonderful things in the world that he will never experience, but he no longer expects anything. He has learned to live with silence, with loneliness. And he thought that life might continue this way until he met Ava. Ava is a little girl around 7 years old who looks very different from the children Jamal has seen. She does not have the bright eyes of other children. Instead, Ava's eyes are always empty, lifeless. She is blind, unable to see anything but darkness. But that night, Ava was not just a blind child, she was a fragile, lonely soul in a cold, indifferent world. The rain had started falling since the previous afternoon, and the weather had turned cold. Jamal was standing behind an old bakery, rummaging through the trash to find some leftover food. He found a small piece of bread still fresh though a little damp. He joyfully picked it up, planning to eat it when he had the chance. But then, a small sound soft like a quiet sob came from the darkness behind the trash bins. Jamal stopped his sharp ears, immediately recognizing that someone was nearby. He turned and saw a little girl huddled under the rain, her face dirty, her hair matted, her eyes seeing nothing. The girl looked weak, almost too tired to move. Something inside Jamal made it impossible for him to ignore her. He walked closer, still holding the piece of bread, and spoke gently, trying not to scare her. "Hey, are you okay?" Jamal's question echoed like an invitation for help. Reminder that someone cared, even if just for a brief moment. With eyes devoid of light, Ava lifted her head, but she couldn't see anything. A strange wave of emotion surged within Jamal. He realized that the life of this little girl might be even worse than his own. Ava did not answer immediately. Her lips barely parted, and only weak sounds came out as if the strength to speak had long since left her. She silently lifted her head, but her eyes were still empty, staring into the distance as if nothing could attract her gaze. Jamal looked at her face and realized she was not only tired, but also deeply hurt, both physically and mentally. Ava's clothes were dirty, her once beautiful pink dress now worn and covered in mud, and the wounds on her legs made Jamal feel a sharp pang of pain. Jamal looked at her tiny hands clenched tightly and felt a strange sensation in his chest. Part of him wanted to walk away because he knew his life wasn't any better, and he had enough worries of his own. But the other part of him couldn't leave this little girl alone in such a state. "What's your name?" Jamal asked again, his voice soft and non-intrusive. His hand still held the piece of bread, but he didn't eat it. Not because he wasn't hungry, but because Ava's presence made the bread seem suddenly insignificant. "I don't know," Ava whispered, her voice like the whisper of wind, weak. "I don't know where I am." Jamal sighed softly and sat down next to Ava, maintaining enough distance to make her feel safe. He felt her fragility. He didn't need to ask much about what had happened because looking at her now, he could guess most of it. She had been abandoned, struggling with pain in a world that showed no mercy. "My name is Jamal," he said, offering his hand, though he knew Ava couldn't see him. But he still wanted her to know that someone was here and he wasn't leaving her. "Do you want something to eat?" Jamal's question startled Ava a little, and a small flicker of light appeared in her dull eyes. She lifted her head, her lips pressed together as if hesitating at the question a stranger like Jamal had just asked. Ava paused for a moment, then nodded hesitantly. Jamal smiled softly, even though his smile was rare, but at this moment to Ava, it was a sign of comfort. Jamal opened his backpack and took out the piece of bread he had found in the trash. He glanced at the bread, then at Ava. The girl looked at him with her cloudy eyes, her trembling hands reaching for the bread as if she had never known kindness. "This is all I have," Jamal said, his voice slightly lower. "But I want you to eat. After all, you need it more than I do." Ava extended her weak hands toward the bread, gently taking it and bringing it to her mouth. She ate slowly, one bite at a time, as if not believing she was actually having food. Jamal watched her, feeling a pang of sorrow in his heart. He thought about himself, how many times during the day he had faced hunger, had eaten scraps from others. But he had no choice. Today, in this moment, nothing was more important than helping this little girl get a meal. A long silence passed, only the sound of the rain and the breathing of two strangers sharing that moment. Jamal sat still, his eyes fixed on Ava as she chewed the bread, then stopped, lifting her head. Ava's gaze, though sightless, held a sense of trust in it. "What's your name?" Jamal asked again, feeling the connection between them growing deeper. Ava quietly answered Ava. That name sounded softly like a faint self-introduction from a little girl who didn't know where she was, who didn't know who she was. But that name was also like a small flame lit in the darkness of the night. Jamal felt that even if only for a brief moment, this moment with Ava had changed everything. "Where are we going?" Ava whispered, her voice shaking. She lifted her head, though she couldn't see, still sensing someone by her side. Jamal knew she was very scared. No one could survive alone in this city without being hurt, and Ava had clearly endured painful days. But Jamal, even though he didn't know how to save Ava, had decided that at least he wouldn't leave her. "You won't be here for long," Jamal replied. "I'll help you." Jamal stood up gently, pulling Ava's hand to help her get up. Though he was only 16 in that moment, Jamal felt like he could do something greater than himself. He didn't know what the next journey would be, but he knew Ava needed him, and he wouldn't give up. Together, these two strangers full of hope stepped out of the dark alley into the cold, rainy night of the city, unaware that their lives would change forever from this point on. The rain had not stopped falling since the afternoon before, gently but persistently, like the worries that never leave Jamal's life. The gray sky made everything appear hazy, and occasionally flashes of lightning would light up the sky, only to disappear quickly into the darkness. The cold rain fell, each drop like shards of glass numbing to the skin, but Jamal didn't care. He continued walking, not even thinking about shielding himself from the rain. The only thing on his mind was Ava, the small girl holding his hand tightly, her bare, dirty, and wounded feet, slow and weary, but still trying her best not to complain. Jamal could feel the weakness in her, and his concern grew stronger with every passing moment. He could feel her weak breaths, her steps becoming heavier. Occasionally she would stumble, causing Jamal to tighten his grip. He couldn't leave her in this condition, but part of him couldn't help but fear what the future might hold. The rain not only made the streets wetter, but it also made people like them even more invisible in this city. Ava remained silent, her eyes still staring straight ahead, showing no reaction when Jamal softly spoke to her. Jamal didn't know what she was thinking or whether she had the strength to continue walking. He looked ahead, feeling every tired step of his own, and gradually realized how difficult this journey was. "Do you want to rest for a bit?" Jamal asked, trying to break the heavy silence, but Ava only shook her head. "No, I'm okay," she replied, though her voice was so faint and lifeless. Jamal looked down at her bare feet, the scratches on her toes and heels starting to swell. He wondered if she could keep going like this. "You know I had to live like this for a long time," Jamal continued, his voice sounding more like he was comforting himself than Ava. "Nothing, no one cared. But then I realized something. If I don't keep going, I'll never get anywhere." Her response didn't change much, but at least it made Jamal feel that he was still doing something for her. Strange thoughts swirled in his head. What am I doing? What's next? He didn't know who Ava was, where her family was, or why she was alone in the rain at this hour, but one thing he was sure of: he couldn't leave her. Occasionally, Ava would look up at Jamal, seemingly searching for comfort in his eyes. Jamal couldn't do much except keep walking, holding her hand tightly, leading her through the narrow, dark alleys. No one on the street stopped to look at them. No one asked where they were going or why a homeless boy was carrying a blind girl who looked frightened and broken. They kept walking, navigating through small alleys, avoiding tall buildings, avoiding busy streets where the police might show up at any moment. Jamal knew that if they were caught, everything would end right there. No one here would stop to help them. All he could do was keep Ava safe, protect her from the dangers outside. As they walked, Jamal felt himself getting more and more exhausted. He had no shoes, just tattered socks, his feet aching, but Jamal kept going. He kept moving like a small boat, drifting in a stormy ocean, struggling against the waves. But the further he went, the more he felt his body threatening to collapse. By early morning, when the first rays of dawn started to filter through the tall building, Jamal stopped by a street lamp, taking a deep breath. Ava had started to doze off on his back, her hand still gripping his shoulder, though she no longer had the strength to speak or react. He felt a deep worry rise in his chest. Could Ava make it? A small noise startled Jamal. A car passed by, but it didn't bother him. What frightened him was the increasing weariness that was evident in Ava's body. Jamal couldn't be sure how much longer she could endure, but one thing he knew for certain, if they didn't find shelter soon, things could get even worse. "We need to rest for a bit," Jamal whispered, stopping under the small awning of a closed shop. He gently placed Ava down on the ground, helped her sit on the steps, and then draped his jacket over her. Jamal felt the cold wind blow through, chilling his back. But what made him feel the cold the most wasn't the wind. It was the silence around them and the worry of what would come next. Ava lifted her head to look at him, her eyes still sightless, but Jamal knew she was searching for comfort in his gaze. "We'll be okay, Ava," Jamal said softly, trying to give her a sense of safety. But inside, the unease continued to rise. Jamal didn't know what to do next, didn't know where to take Ava, and whether they could continue this journey without facing more risks. The only thing he knew for sure was he wouldn't give up. He wouldn't leave her no matter what. Under the shabby awning of the closed shop, Jamal sat beside Ava, though his body felt like it would collapse from exhaustion. His hand still held hers, feeling her weak breaths as she tried to stay awake but clearly unable to. The rain still fell steadily, though there were signs it might stop soon, but the space around them was still cold and bleak. The streets were empty, no one walking by, only the sound of the wind and the rain falling rhythmically on the roof. Occasionally, a car would pass its headlights, gliding over the puddles, creating ghostly patterns in the night. Jamal sighed, closing his eyes for a moment, trying to find a bit of peace in his mind. He admitted to himself that he was drained. His legs ached, his body weary, while Ava still leaned against the cold wall. Jamal had no clear plan. He only knew one thing: they had to keep going, no matter how hard it was. Reaching into his backpack, Jamal pulled out an old, nearly empty water bottle and handed it to Ava. She looked at the bottle but didn't react. He held it near her mouth, gently lifting her head so she could drink a bit. Ava drank as if she had been thirsty for a long time, the first sip taken slowly, as if each drop were precious. When she lowered the bottle, Jamal gently said, "We'll rest here for a bit, then keep going. Okay?" He looked into her cloudy eyes, almost searching for a sign that she would be okay. But Ava just nodded tiredly and closed her eyes again. Jamal could feel the exhaustion overwhelming her. He knew the journey was far from over, and if they didn't find shelter or help soon, Ava wouldn't be able to continue. He searched his bag again and took out the piece of bread that was now stale and moldy, no longer fresh like before. He sat down beside Ava, closing his eyes for a moment, deep in thought. He wondered why he had to endure such pointless suffering, why he had to live like a ghost in this city, where people were always too busy with their own lives to notice what was happening around them. But then he looked at Ava, and all those negative thoughts faded away. This little girl had become the only one he felt he needed to protect, and nothing was more important right now than taking care of her. "This bread doesn't taste good," Jamal laughed bitterly, then gently handed Ava a piece. "But at least it'll fill your stomach." Ava took the piece of bread, lifting her head, her eyes unable to see, but the way she grasped the bread, her hand trembling as she held it, made Jamal feel a pang of sorrow. She ate slowly, as if each bite needed to be savored, and Jamal looked at her with an infinite sadness. When Ava finished eating, she leaned against Jamal, feeling the warmth of his hoodie. Though there was nothing truly warm in this situation, at least for this moment, they had found some comfort in each other. Jamal squeezed Ava's hand, determined not to let her endure any more pain. But the challenges were far from over. The rain began to fall, harder drops now large and soaking Jamal through. He looked ahead, the dim light of morning beginning to appear, but the streets were still empty. Everything was still the same. No one had come. No one had seen them. Jamal knew that if they stayed here any longer, they might face even greater danger. And if they kept walking, Jamal wasn't sure Ava could take much more. Looking at Ava, Jamal felt a wave of anxiety swell within him. He could keep walking, but what about Ava? She was weak and couldn't take care of herself, and Jamal wasn't much better off. He knew one thing for sure: they needed help. They couldn't continue like this forever. "Do you want me to carry you?" Jamal asked, though. Inside, he didn't want to take on another burden. But if Ava couldn't walk anymore, he would do anything to help her. Ava didn't answer right away, but she nodded, her hand still gripping his tightly. Jamal lifted her up and placed her gently on his back. With Ava on his back, Jamal felt his shoulders weigh down more than ever, but he didn't stop. He knew that if he stopped, not only would he be in danger, but Ava would be too. His legs began to falter, but he kept walking. He had no choice but to continue the journey. No matter how tired he was, no matter how worn out his shoes were, or how painful his feet felt, he wouldn't stop until Ava was safe. And in that moment, when the rain seemed relentless, Jamal felt something powerful in his heart, a vague but very real belief that even in the hardest circumstances, there would always be a small hope to guide him and Ava. He didn't know where they were headed, but the one thing he knew for sure was that they wouldn't give up. He wouldn't leave Ava alone in this rain. Under the cold rain, while the streets remained empty, and no one paid attention to the footsteps of a homeless boy carrying a blind girl on his back, Jamal kept walking step by step. The weight of exhaustion enveloped his body, and his legs felt like they might give out at any moment. But no, Jamal couldn't stop. Ava needed him. She was depending on him to keep going, and he couldn't fail her. The rain, as if a harsh reminder of their struggles, never ceased. Jamal felt the heaviness in his body, but what hurt more was the emptiness he felt as he saw Ava slowly closing her eyes, her body growing weaker with each passing moment. He could feel her breath becoming more labored, each breath shorter, as if she was gradually losing her strength. Jamal didn't know exactly where they were going. He only knew that he had to do something to save her. The streets around them were still cold and silent, but then in that moment, Jamal felt like he couldn't walk another step. He was so tired he could barely keep his feet on the ground. And then, at that very moment, the unexpected happened. A noise came from behind, followed by the screeching of car brakes. Jamal turned, suddenly caught in a confrontation he never imagined. A sleek black car had stopped right next to them. The car door opened and a middle-aged man stepped out. The headlights of the car illuminated his face, blinding Jamal for a moment, but the man's eyes were fixed on them both. Jamal was confused, unsure of what to do. He quickly took a step back, but the man didn't approach him. He just looked at Ava, then turned his gaze to Jamal, his sharp eyes seeming to search for answers. Jamal's mind was spinning. He didn't know whether to run away. Part of him wanted to leave it all behind and return to the dark streets where no one cared, no one noticed. But another part of him longed for help. The man looked at Jamal again, and there was something in his eyes that made Jamal feel a bit at ease. "Do you need help?" the man asked, his voice deep and calm but full of concern. Jamal, with his tired legs, looked up at the man, his voice trembling. I, I'm just trying to help this girl. She's lost and I don't know what to do anymore." The man didn't respond immediately but looked at Ava. His eyes softened as if he understood everything. A moment later, he turned back to Jamal. "You've done a lot already," he said. "You've done well, but now we need to take care of this little girl." Before Jamal could react, the man swiftly stepped forward and gently lifted Ava off Jamal's back, holding her in the warmth of his arms. Jamal felt a hollow emptiness inside, but at the same time a sense of relief began to wash over him. He no longer had to bear the worry of not being strong enough to help Ava. "We'll take her to my house," the man said softly but firmly. "You can come with us. Don't worry, we'll help you." And so in the cold rain in a city where it seemed no one noticed, a stranger stopped and provided them with what they needed most: help. Jamal didn't know the man's name, but as he opened the car door to place Ava inside, Jamal felt a shift in the air. He no longer felt like just a homeless boy in this city. He began to feel, even if it was just a flicker of hope, that maybe, just maybe, there would be a chance for him to change his life. Jamal didn't know what would happen next, but he knew that this journey with Ava wouldn't end like the others had. He had reached a turning point in his life where the kindness of a stranger had changed everything. After placing Ava in the car, the man turned to look at Jamal. "You don't have to go alone anymore. Together we'll be okay." With those words, the car door closed and the vehicle began to drive away. Jamal watched as it disappeared into the rain. He no longer felt alone. And although he wasn't sure what would happen next, he felt he had done the right thing, and that made him feel stronger than ever. He no longer had to walk alone. And neither did Ava. Jamal stood quietly on the sidewalk, the dim light from the street lamps casting a soft glow on the car that slowly disappeared into the mist of the rain. The rain still fell, but now the coldness in his heart seemed to have lifted somewhat. He felt a clear shift, a strange but hopeful sensation. He was no longer the only one in the dark. The rain seemed lighter in Jamal's mind. Everything seemed to slow down. He stood there alone in the cold wind, feeling the change approaching. He could hear the distant sound of cars, the swish of tires through puddles in the rain, but in that moment, all those sounds seemed to fade. He no longer felt like part of these streets. "We'll be okay," Jamal whispered to himself, though he wasn't entirely sure of it. But at least now he didn't have to face all these challenges alone. Jamal turned back, his legs heavy, but in his mind was a sense of relief he had never felt before. He no longer had to live alone in this city, no longer had to hide from the indifference of those around him. Jamal knew that another path was opening up, a path he had never thought possible, but now he was ready to walk it. The car drove through the streets, the headlights illuminating every corner of the night, creating an atmosphere of mystery and difference. Jamal sat in the car, his breathing still hurried, but now there was a sense of peace, as if he were in a dream he never thought he could have. Ava lay in the man's arms, her face still pale from exhaustion, but at least now she didn't have to fear, didn't have to worry about her safety. The man sat beside her occasionally, looking down at the boy, his gaze gentle but still filled with concern. "We'll be there soon," the man said, his voice warm but determined. "You'll get the help you need, and you won't have to worry about what's to come. This little girl, just like you, deserves a better life." Jamal simply nodded. His gaze turned out the window, where the streets began to feel more familiar. Though he didn't know exactly where they were headed, the man's words made him feel that a change was coming. A part of him still feared, still couldn't fully believe it, but he couldn't deny the miracle the man had brought. He didn't have to live in the dark anymore. He didn't have to walk alone anymore. When the car finally stopped in front of a large house, Jamal felt a strange but hopeful sensation. The man led them inside, where the warmth and quiet enveloped them. The soft golden lights illuminated the house, creating a cozy, complete space full of safety. Protected from the rain and cold outside, Jamal felt a clear difference. It felt like he had stepped into an entirely different world. The large house, with its bright white walls, beautiful decorative paintings, and elegant furniture, seemed completely out of place for a boy like Jamal. He looked around, feeling both amazed and confused, but a part of him felt reassured. It had been a long time since he had felt that way. "Ava, you'll be okay," the man said gently, as he laid the girl on a warm bed, pulling the blanket up over her. Ava remained silent, her eyes still cloudy, but her breathing had become gentler. Jamal stood nearby, watching everything unfold, and felt a peace he had never known before. The man turned to Jamal. "Would you sit down for a moment? I'd like to talk to you." Jamal nodded, walking over to the couch in the living room. He didn't know what to say, but as he sat down, he felt a change. A deep change inside that he couldn't explain in words. There was a warmth, a safety that he had never had before. The man sat next to Jamal, not speaking right away, just observing him gently. Jamal couldn't help but feel awkward, but after a while the man spoke. "I'm not the one who saved you, Jamal. You saved yourself when you decided not to leave Ava behind. That's why you deserve help. You deserve a chance, and I will help you get that chance." The man's words washed over Jamal like a wave, soothing every worry in his heart. He sat there silently, but a strong emotion rose within him. He felt the difference between this place and everything he had ever known before. The feeling of a real home, of someone willing to help, of a different future. Jamal looked at the man, saying nothing, but in his eyes a silent "thank you" echoed. Thank you for trusting him. Thank you for helping him, not just because of Ava, but for himself. For the first time in many years, Jamal felt that his life could change. And though he didn't know what the future held, at least now he didn't have to walk alone anymore. Jamal woke up the next morning with a different feeling, a strange sensation he had never experienced before. No longer was he waking up to cold nights on the sidewalk or tired mornings from dark hidden corners of the city. He woke up in a warm room with a bed, soft blankets, and the gentle light from the windows looking out onto a lush green garden. Jamal looked around, unable to believe he was here in a clean room filled with light. The night before, he had been given a room of his own, a space that was not a hurried place to sleep on the cold ground, not a makeshift shelter. It was a real bedroom with a warm bed and a soft nightlight. For the first time in years, Jamal didn't feel abandoned. Ava was still asleep in the bed beside him, tired, but no longer looking frantic in her sleep. Jamal watched her for a long time, seeing her eyes closed, her breathing steady, with none of the unease or fear from the night before. The feeling of safety was so unfamiliar to him that he couldn't help but sigh in relief. After a while, the man, Mr. Nathan, came in with a warm smile on his face. He knocked gently on the door and entered the room holding a tray of food. "Good morning, Jamal. I brought you breakfast," he said, his voice full of care but also gentle. Jamal sat up, still feeling a bit of soreness in his legs, but he felt light when he stood. He no longer felt like a homeless person, no longer felt like someone with no rights in this world. Mr. Nathan handed Jamal the food tray, which contained a full breakfast, eggs toast, and a glass of warm milk. Jamal looked at the tray and then at Mr. Nathan, his heart filled with emotion. He didn't know what to say. He just knew that he was being treated like someone truly important. I I don't know how to thank you," Jamal whispered, his eyes red with emotion. "I'm used to being alone, used to no one caring about me. But now, it feels like there's another chance." Mr. Nathan sat beside him, his smile soft. "You deserve to be treated better, Jamal. Sometimes, people like you, people with nothing, get easily overlooked, but I believe that if you give yourself a chance, everything will be different." Jamal nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. Mr. Nathan had not only helped him, but he had also helped Jamal realize that he had value. Jamal had once felt invisible in this world, but now he felt like he could walk with newfound confidence. After breakfast, Mr. Nathan took Jamal on a tour of the house. This wasn't a luxurious or extravagant home, but it was a place full of love and care. Beautiful paintings were hung on the walls, soft chairs were scattered around, and the warm atmosphere made Jamal feel like he truly belonged here. Everything around him had a peacefulness, a stillness he had never experienced. Jamal didn't say much, just silently followed Mr. Nathan, feeling the change in each of his steps. When they returned to the living room, Ava had woken up. She was sitting up in bed, her eyes still not fully clear, but there was no longer any panic or fear in her gaze like the night before. Jamal approached her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Good morning, Ava. Are you feeling okay?" Jamal asked, and Ava looked at him. Though her eyes were still sightless, the calm and peace in her gaze had changed everything. Ava nodded, a faint smile appearing on her face. "I'm okay," she whispered, her voice soft but with a safety in it that Jamal couldn't describe. He felt like he no longer had to worry about Ava's future. They had both found a real home. After a few days, Jamal's life had changed in a miraculous way. He no longer had to worry about where his next meal would come from or where to sleep at night. Mr. Nathan had helped him find a school where he could continue his education and grow. Jamal was not only given a home, but also given a chance for a better future. He began participating in family activities, helping with small tasks around the house, and gradually felt like he was a part of this family. Slowly, Jamal was no longer a homeless boy. He became part of a family with people who loved him, cared for him, and paid attention to him. Moreover, he realized that he too could become someone who helped others just as Mr. Nathan had helped him. Day by day, Jamal learned to rebuild his life. And every time he looked at Ava, he felt proud that he hadn't left her behind, proud that he had done the right thing, proud that he had saved a life and helped her rediscover hope. In the end, Jamal didn't just save Ava, he had saved himself. Jamal's life had changed completely. He was no longer the lonely boy wandering the cold streets of the city. He no longer had to live each day in fear and despair, always feeling like he had been left behind. Now Jamal had found a real home, a family, a place where he could feel like he belonged, where no one judged him based on his past, but instead saw him with compassion and love. Jamal's transformation didn't just come from what he received from Mr. Nathan and his family. He had learned a profound lesson about the value of kindness, persistence, and the power of empathy. It was through small actions like saving Ava that Jamal realized his own strength, and above all, it opened a new path in his life. Every morning when Jamal woke up, he felt a small but genuine happiness. He had a family, a warm bed to sleep in, and people who cared about him. In stark contrast to the long years of living in the shadows, he now had a future to hope for, a future he would not waste. Ava, though still unable to see, seemed to find peace in this home as well. She no longer feared the night, no longer felt lost in a world she could not see. She was loved, cared for, and most importantly, she had found a sense of family, a feeling she had never imagined before. One day, as Jamal was helping Mr. Nathan take care of the small garden behind the house, Mr. Nathan came over to him, his eyes filled with pride and gratitude. "You know, Jamal," he said, his voice deep and warm, "you've changed our lives. Don't think that just because you're the one receiving help, you have nothing to give. You've taught Ava and me a lesson in perseverance and love." Jamal stopped looking at Mr. Nathan with a deeply moved expression. He didn't know what to say, but he simply smiled. These words from the man who had given him everything he needed made his heart swell with emotion. He hadn't just changed Ava's life, he had also changed his own. "Thank you," Jamal whispered. "Thank you for believing in me." Mr. Nathan patted Jamal's shoulder lightly and walked inside the house. Jamal stood there for a moment, looking up at the clear sky above, feeling the warmth of the sunlight on the ground. This feeling was a miracle for him, something he never dared to dream of before. With Mr. Nathan and his family's support, Jamal had decided to continue his studies, not only to secure a stable career, but also to build a future he could be proud of. He started attending classes at school, working harder, and studying more diligently than ever before. Each day, he felt himself growing both mentally and physically. Not only did Jamal study, but he also became involved in community activities, helping those in need, just as he had once been. He wanted to repay Mr. Nathan for his help during difficult times, and he wanted to be an inspiration to others, showing them that no matter how tough life may be, they can always change and start over. With Ava every day, she grew not only physically, but also mentally. She began to learn how to read Braille and gradually found joy in the small daily activities. Though she couldn't see, Ava had the ability to sense and love the world around her in a special way. Jamal felt proud to see her becoming more confident in life. A year later, on a beautiful morning, Jamal stood at the window of his room looking out at the garden he had tended to with Mr. Nathan. Everything had changed, but the most important thing was that he felt he belonged here, that he had value. He smiled, no longer feeling lonely or lost. He realized that all the struggles, all the challenges he had faced before were merely stepping stones to becoming the person he was today. His life now was not just about existing, but about living with purpose. Jamal was no longer a homeless boy. He was a young man with dreams, a family, and love. And most importantly, he had found trust in himself and in those around him. What he once thought impossible had now become a part of his life. Jamal's story is a living testament that kindness, persistence, and compassion can change a person's life. No matter how hard life may get, if we trust in ourselves and help others, we can always make a difference. And no one, no matter their circumstances, is without value. We all deserve a second chance, a home, and a brighter future.